And hello, Jets fans, and welcome to an uneventful Friday here on Rich Sports Talk. And we were going to focus a little bit more on the Lions preview this weekend, but that all got turned upside down this morning as Robert Saleh has announced that not only will Mike White not play this weekend, but Zach Wilson will be back under center for the New York Jets. A whole lot to get into, but let's get into the initial comments from about Mike White. According to Connor Hughes a few minutes ago, White has a fracture to the ribs. The worry is that if he gets hit in the wrong place, it will cause further damage. White is desperate to play. He's talked to 10 different doctors to try to get clearance. White also said he asked the Jets if he needed permission to play or if he just can't play. He wants to be out there so badly, and he believes that he can play, but the doctors, of course, advising against more internal injury. And look, with the way the NFL season has gone, let me start off with this, which for Mike White, and I feel horrible for Mike White and this injury, but with the way the season has gone for injuries in the NFL, and especially putting guys back out there at risk, especially the whole Tua situation earlier in the season, my thought is that the NFL, the NFLPA has been more critical of doctors. Now, it doesn't look good when the Jets sent White back out there on Sunday, so we will wonder if there's going to be anything from that. But overall, it is incredibly frustrating that White cannot go. I love the attitude that he wants to play, but the way the NFL is, especially with all the major injuries this year and the whole Tua situation, I believe medical staffs are erring on the side of caution and protecting the player. And look, it's frustrating because you want to see Mike White out there, but Zach Wilson will be the quarterback under center. And if you're joining us afterward, would love your comments, would love your thoughts on Zach being the quarterback. Again, make sure you put the comments below. We will get to them and answer them at a future date. And if you're in the live stream now, make sure to reach out and put in the comments your thoughts on Zach Wilson. But look, let me get to the big picture here. If you've been following this channel, you know what I have been saying for months. But if you're new, let me just elaborate. I have said since probably July, this whole season wasn't necessarily about the wins and losses. This whole season was about getting an answer about Zach Wilson, good or bad. It was to find out if Zach was the quarterback of this team and going forward for a couple of reasons. Number one, year two is the year you usually see growth from these quarterbacks. And more importantly, I've said this too, the AFC is loaded with quarterbacks, and not just good quarterbacks, young and talented quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And realistically, you need someone that can go toe-to-toe with those guys, or at the very least, compete with those guys on a big level. And I've said, look, you cannot put this on the Jets if Zach Wilson fails, because they have gone above and beyond any other team with a second-year quarterback in trying to make this work. So now Zach is back in the lineup. It's a hard thing as a Jet fans because two things can be true at the same time. It's incredibly frustrating because you know that this team's best chance to win is with Mike White under center. I don't think that that's any question. And as Jet fans, you hate the fact that this playoff drought, which is 12 years long, want to get this over with as soon as possible. You see how great this defense is. The Jets are so tantalizingly close to the playoffs. It would be incredibly frustrating if this team, with a great start, was not able to get into the postseason. And realistically, you can make the case was held back from the postseason because of Zach Wilson to an extent. Because Zach Wilson missed the first 2 games of the season, didn't progress the way many people thought he would progress this year. And you wonder if Mike White started one of the 2 Patriot games, could the Jets have won those games? If Mike White had started one of the first 3 games, could they maybe snuck 2 of 3? But regardless of all that, the big picture for this Jet team is they have to get an answer on Zach Wilson. And I said this on my reaction last week after the game. I said, look, if Zach Wilson is inactive for the rest of the season, it is very telling that they feel he has absolutely no future. When he was bumped up to the number 2, I was like, okay, that's fine, but we will have to see how this plays out. This is Zach Wilson's moment right now, and it will be a defining moment because Zach Wilson has an uphill climb. Because Zach Wilson doesn't just have to play well and win a game against the Lions. He has to do something even harder, and that is win back both a fan base and a locker room. Because it is clear that while the Jets might not hate Zach as a guy, they weren't exactly thrilled with his response in New England. And there's a sentiment in that locker room that they just do not like how Zach has handled his business. I don't think that they personally hate Zach as a person, but I do think that they are frustrated by him holding this team back going forward. So I think actions always speak louder than words. In the last 3 weeks, how much this team has praised Mike White out of that locker room shows how much that they just want Mike to be the quarterback. Not that they think Mike White is an elite quarterback, but they clearly feel he is the better option for this team. And look, I've said it the last couple weeks, the production from Elijah Moore has skyrocketed. The production from Garrett Wilson has skyrocketed. And Garrett Wilson went from someone that was meandering a little bit in the middle of the season to all of a sudden, again, being a favorite to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year. But you look at Garrett Wilson with Zach Wilson, he hasn't caught a touchdown pass with Zach Wilson. He hasn't had over a 100-yard game with Zach Wilson. So it will be interesting. Can Zach get those guys involved? Can he rebuild the relationship? Because I saw a great quote on a podcast when CJ was on. I forget which national podcast. We went on a national podcast and basically told everyone that he texted Zach that Monday after the Patriot game saying, look, a lot of people in the locker room not happy with what you said. I think you need to apologize. And if Zach didn't have the wherewithal to understand that situation, it is incredibly troubling. And look, I get that the Jets are trying to give him the hard reset. I get that they're trying to get him on the mechanics. I get all that. But look, this is year 2. This is the modern NFL. By the end of year 2, we see what you're projected to be. Trevor Lawrence struggled a lot this year, but we are seeing why many people thought he should be the number 1 pick the way he has played in recent weeks. We've seen with Justin Fields, though, I would like to see him throw the football better, the explosiveness that he can bring to the table. And even Mac Jones. I don't think Mac Jones is a good quarterback, but I am seeing someone that is incredibly sure and a very smart player where he's getting frustrated with a system that they've boxed him in with a defensive coordinator, and he's barking at them saying, basically, you guys are idiots. It's almost like he wants to be the offensive coordinator because he's like, I probably have more experience with an offense than both of you guys. So you look at where Zach is right now. Zach not only has to play well, like Zach could play well the rest of the season, but will this team buy into him in the long term? And the biggest thing, too, is also this fan base. I would love to hear from you in the chats. Like, what are your thoughts? Because there's, I think, 3 camps right now. The biggest camp right now is, I believe, most Jet fans feel Zach's not the answer, move on. There's a second camp where you have, don't believe he's the guy, but let's see if he gets an opportunity, what he can do with it. And then the latter camp, which is still people that believe Zach Wilson can be the guy, and he's just been overwhelmed and that the Jets have not developed him correctly. But for Zach, this is an opportunity where if he goes out there and lays an egg, I think he's done. Because you cannot sell to this locker room and to this fan base that Zach is the quarterback in 2023. You could have him on this roster potentially, but you better have a number 1 option with Zach maybe being the number 2. And if he has to come in and learn, okay, maybe that will work. But even though this is painful as Jet fans, because I get it, I want this team to make the playoffs as desperately as all of you do. But I also want this team to be a long-term competitive team for the postseason, be in the mix every single year. I want this to not be a flash in the pan like 2015. And I don't think it is a flash in the pan. I've been saying I really think 2023 is going to be a big off year for this team when you get another year with these guys. especially these young players. You get AVT back, potentially Mekhi Becton back, Breece Hall back next year, and you have another offseason to address some of the holes on this team. I still believe that next year is the big breakout year for this Jet team. The question is, who will be the signal caller next year? And look, if Zach falls and fails, the silver lining to that, and look, I know a lot of Jet fans will not want to hear it, but if he fails, you got your answer. Was it a painful answer? Yes. Was it a frustrating answer? Yes. Is it another rookie quarterback that failed for this franchise? Yes. But I would rather have a franchise that is willing to admit they made a mistake and move off a mistake and adjust and pivot than making something keep beating their heads against the wall and making something work. Because Zach also, this isn't a situation with Zach where he's just struggling with the X's and O's, which he is. I mean, Tony Romo pointed that out pretty clearly. He's struggling getting the football out. He's struggling reading the defenses. He's struggling progressions in this offense. He's also got to now learn how to get these relations back in the locker room. And that, to me, is going to be the hardest thing. Because if Zach, let's say the Jets go 3-4 down the stretch and get into the playoffs, and Zach somehow starts these games, but Zach kind of looks like he did in the first couple of games where, okay, passing yard isn't great, maybe makes 1 or 2 plays a game, but you still come to the end of the season like, I don't know, because it is clear this offense functions not only better with Mike White, but every other quarterback, like Josh Johnson last year for 3 quarters, even Joe Flacco, who is clearly done and clearly checked out, still passed for over 270 yards in 3 games with this offense. I mean, the Jets have weapons. The Jets have playmakers. The Jets have players that can turn a game. And right now with Zach, it is just incredibly frustrating. But look, either way now, I think we're going to get an answer. Because almost a worst case scenario would have been Zach doesn't play another game this year. Now, if it was me personally and never played another game this year, I think that you should move off. But could this organization maybe somehow think they can salvage it because it was a learning curve? He's ready to go for 2023. We'll bring in another veteran in case it doesn't work out, but Zach's still a guy. If Zach fails against the Lions, and look, I get it. The Lions have a good front four, and the Jets' offensive line is not great. But that Lions secondary is bad. That Lions team on the road is not the same team as they are at home. This is arguably the biggest game for the Jets in the last 5 seasons. If you're Zach Wilson and you can't handle this pressure and you can't handle this adversity and you were not humbled by being benched, then the answer is going to be very clear. You are not the long-term answer for this franchise. All right, guys, I see the comments section is open up. Again, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts about Zach Wilson coming back, would love to hear from you. SpinMax Dave, I apologize. Look, with work's been crazy the last couple of weeks, of course, with the holidays too. I'm trying to do as much content as I can. Definitely after the new year, especially with the off season, I will have a lot. I'm still going to do reactions after the games. It's just been, I've been slammed with work. So I'm trying to get as much content up here as possible. Good to see you as always. Lions. Oh, Jesus, not Giants. Lions coming up with a lot of confidence. Jets have a lot of questions, especially Cuba. If we win, it will help Zach's image and our playoff chances. I agree and disagree. It depends. In a weird way, it's kind of funny because there's so many scenarios that could happen. What if Zach throws for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks? I don't think it's going to happen, but let's play the hypothetical game. And the Jets somehow lose. I don't know how the fan base would feel. And look, it's kind of like, even if Zach wins this game, but he wins it, like he throws for like 175 yards, doesn't turn over, but it's not pretty. I don't think it's going to answer a lot of questions about him. And look, I think the biggest thing is going to be Thursday night football as well, because you're going to get 2 home games. 2 home games you need to win. 2 home games where you probably have the better team. And like it or not, Zach, especially if he plays in the Thursday night game, that's going to be a measuring stick versus Trevor Lawrence, where you are, and look, Lawrence has had his struggles. Lawrence has not been great early this season. But if Lawrence comes in, looks confident, is playing well, and Zach looks completely overwhelmed, you're going to see a big difference between the two. Unfortunately, it is Flacco. They have already announced that. I think it should be Streveler, but it is Flacco, which I hate. Zach is not the answer now. He needs more time to play grown-up QB. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? I mean, look, this is the state of the NFL now. I mean, if you're not hitting year 2, teams are going to move off of you. I mean, we've seen the Cardinals move off of Rosen after 1 year, but look, if you are not popping, and let's not also forget the Jets moved heaven and earth for Zach. Like, every time there's an offensive line injury, this team's aggressive to go out and add offensive linemen. This offseason, they went out and got Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, James Robinson when Breece Hall went down, Zonovan Knight to add to Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, a whole new tight end room, a whole new offensive line. Like, the Jets, I keep saying this, they've done so much for Zach. And it's like, First pass he sails over the receivers had this. Oh God, I cannot imagine what it's going to be like. And part of me, look, every Jet fan has their right to boo. I'd say give it at least a full quarter for Zach. I mean, look, I know it's frustrating. You want to show how frustrated you are with Zach and that you don't believe he's the guy. But look, here's the situation. Mike White is not coming in. He's not going to be active for Sunday. If he was there, maybe. But look, the other option is Joe Flacco. I mean, the biggest thing for this Jet team is for Zach to play well because you want this team to make the playoffs. Look, if Zach struggles the first drive or two, try to lay off. But if they're down in the second quarter and Zach's bouncing passes and just looks completely overwhelmed, then I say, you know what, motivated T, go for it. But look, I say be a little patient with Zach just because, he hasn't played in 3 weeks. But, man, I mean, the problem with booing is it's not going to help. There's no better option. I mean, I know every Jet fan wants Streveler, and I think Streveler should be the backup. Look, Streveler, to me, at least you can run with him. You can do some athletic things with him. Flacco is just a liability, especially with this offensive line. Good old Jacob Cooper. He's brutally bad. Can't read defense or make decisions or anything. And look, if he continues to struggle with that, I think it's going to be. Look, Jacob, this is how I started the show. And this is my thoughts on this whole season. You're going to get an answer on Zach, whether it's good or bad. The bad, look, it sucks. You want Zach to be the franchise quarterback, but I'm also of the opinion, too, of if Zach's not the guy, you will have options this offseason, whether it be the draft, free agency, potentially a trade. There will be other options out there for this team to upgrade the quarterback position. And to be honest with you, with the playmakers and the roster they have, you don't necessarily need a top 10 quarterback. You just need an efficient quarterback that's not going to kill you. I mean, you've also seen the system work in San Francisco with their weapons. I mean, Brock Purdy, I don't think Purdy is anything special. I think he can be a good backup in this league, but just you see it. If you run this offense, you understand it, you understand the reads. This is a system that's very quarterback conducive. So you don't need an elite quarterback. You just need a functional quarterback. And Zach, to be honest, to this point, hasn't proved he can be functional. Zach does not look relaxed in the pocket. I mean, that's an understatement. He runs backwards. He is happy if he tries to play back or screws up his mechanics. Zach needs to slow the game down in his head. I mean, if it's not starting to slow down now, I don't know when it will. So, and look, you know me, I've been a Zach defender for months on this show. I've always preached patience with young quarterbacks. It's a learning curve. But here's the thing. When the draft's going to give you 4 or 5 quarterbacks a year, when you look at how many reps now these quarterbacks get coming up through high school and through college, and when you see how quickly guys can answer the question if they're the quarterback in the NFL. I mean, Joe Burrow, you knew halfway through year 2, he's the guy. Justin Herbert, year 2, You knew he was the guy. Lamar Jackson, MVP second year. You knew he was the guy. So when you see Zach, I mean, could you make the case at the best, he's the same he was last year? Now, some will argue he's regressed. If you want to argue he's regressed, look, I can't really argue with it. The stats are not pretty. He hasn't been efficient. And look, I know a lot of people want Saleh and the organization, but look, I don't think they're going to do that publicly. And internally, I do think that they are looking to move on. Like, they would not have gone to Mike White. And I get it. People are like, oh, well, they're resetting him. They're making him inactive. I think that's basically the Jets' almost last resort. Like, look, it's gotten to the point now. We have to make Zach inactive to send a loud message and send the message that, look, we're not as sold as you think we are. And if Zach cannot respond to this, he's not the quarterback. He's not the guy going forward. Streveler showed he can play pressure football wing. Yeah, look, Streveler was decent in the preseason. I wouldn't mind that. But again, it's tough because I think that the Jets have seen a little success with Flacco this season. They respect him. And look, this is one of the issues I do have with Saleh is being a player's coach. I think sometimes coaches tend to maybe give some players a little bit longer of a leash than they should. But I think they should go with Streveler, but that's the decision that they're making. Maybe that they feel if over 5 drives, Flacco might be terrible for 2, but he might give them 3 decent drives, or their feeling is maybe Streveler can't give them 1 decent drive. I don't really get it. JD, I add another D in there. JDD, Dynamite. Okay. Sorry with the AC/DC joke. Okay. If Zach ran forward as much, Zach, I think this also goes back to the injury too. And look, when I put the whole picture together, like when Zach went down with the injury, I do remember saying he needs to not only play solid football, but he really has to play great down the stretch because let's be honest, his stats are not great. He's not efficient. And the other big thing too is he's got the injury issue. I mean, we were lucky Zach Wilson wasn't out the entire season or longer. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, he missed, 3 games? So Zach was very fortunate with that injury, but you can tell, I do think that injury has played into it a bit. He doesn't seem comfortable taking the hits like what Mike White is, although White needs to work on taking hits because he does leave himself vulnerable, as we've seen with the rib injury. And look, Zach, one of the biggest weapons is his legs. And really, I think at this point, if the passing's not working, he needs to beat teams with his legs, but he just doesn't seem to want to run. And look, part of me gets it. He got injured scrambling. And maybe that plays into it. I mean, look at last week. I mean, Kyler Murray, it's funny because, not funny, let me rephrase that. It's intriguing how basically Kyler Murray and Zach Wilson were hurt on scrambles running to the right. And the interesting thing was when Zach went down, we thought it was an ACL. And luckily it wasn't. But you see with Kyler Murray, similar situation, running on a grass field, rolling out, trying to make a cut, goes down with a non-contact injury. So I wonder if that's playing his mind. And I wonder if Zach almost looks at it and goes, well, Fields is getting beat up from running all over the field. Murray went down with an injury. I wonder if that plays into it. Maybe he doesn't want to run because he feels like he's going to get hurt if he does that. If Zach ran forward as much as he does backward, he'd rush for 90 yards. Probably. I mean, look, I would like to see more quarterback design runs with Zach under center. I really would. But I think part of it is Zach doesn't want to get hit and Zach doesn't feel comfortable. Yeah, 4 TDs. I mean, White had 3 in one game and Zach had 4. And look, I mean, look at Garrett Wilson's production with other quarterbacks and with Zach. Look at Elijah Moore's production. Like, it's night and day. I mean, Elijah Moore was basically in witness protection. And At least with White, he's functional. And that's another thing. I love Braxton Berrios. I think Berrios is a good player, but can we stop designing key plays to go to Berrios? Like, I'm sorry, but like now we've gone to the fourth down of Berrios in Minnesota. The last week they had the drive down in the red zone trying to throw the slant to Berrios on the third down. Look, I love Berrios as a returner. I love him as a gadget player. I love him for a couple plays in a game, but can we get the ball to Elijah Moore? I mean, Elijah Moore is one of this team's best playmakers, and he can do dynamic things with the ball in his hand. And look, in the red zone, instead targeting these smaller, under 6-foot receivers, can we try, I don't know, throwing it to the tight ends that we've invested all this money in the red zone? I mean, Uzama, Conklin, just a thought. Okay, that's enough for that rant. Zach will be our QB Sunday. What should LaFleur do to help him be successful? Well, it's a good question, Spin Max Dave, because I don't know what he can do, because we saw it in the New England games. When Zach was struggling to complete the basics, when Zach's struggling to basically go through the progressions, when Zach can't hit Garrett Wilson on a quick slant, when he can't hit Berrios or receivers in the flat, I remember people after that game were killing me in the comments saying LaFleur sucks. We should fire LaFleur. It's not Zach's fault. I'm like, if you're the offensive coordinator for the Jets in that game and Zach Wilson's your quarterback, what could you have done? If he cannot complete or see some of the simplest concepts of this offense, like Elijah Moore on the crossing route right in front of him, wide open on that 3rd and 1, doesn't see it, tries to check it down to Carter, which led to the punt. Personally, if I had to say anything, stick with the run game. Look, it might be ugly. You might not get a lot of offense going. And look, this team I know has been bad with the slow starts, but stick with the running game, pounds on it at night, wear this Lions defense out. So hopefully in the second half, you can start getting some big chunk plays. Like, stick with the run. This team, to me, gets away from the run way too fast. And I get it. They don't have their big horse, Breece Hall, but Zonovan Knight's been a very good running back. Last week, Michael Carter was frustrating. I want to see a little bit more Ty Johnson in there. So, look, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. And look, this offensive line is banged up, but if I've been saying this all year, their strength is run blocking. Like, they're at their best run blocking. And if you like, that to me is the strength of this Jet team. And the way you beat Buffalo earlier this year was when you ran the ball, you ran the ball, and you ran the ball. So run the ball, maybe design runs for Zach in there. Stick with the run. Really early, I try to get those easy passes for Zach to build confidence, but he's got to hit them. I also wonder if up-tempo might help. Just maybe help him get in a rhythm, maybe so that Lions defense can't sub. That's a little bit more backyard football, which Zach seems a little bit more comfortable with, but those would be my suggestions. Yeah, you awesome icon, by the way. Yeah, you and every Jet fan, it's made them incredibly nervous. Canadian football. Talk D-line. If Williams is out, who will be out for the to get after Goff? If he's out, that will be a big loss. I think what you're going to see a lot of is, again, this defensive line. I don't think after Williams has one true alpha, but to me, it's going to have to come from the interior because the Lions have a good offensive line, but their strength is definitely their tackles. So the Jets are going to have to attack the interior. What does that mean? You're going to need a big game from Sheldon Rankins. You're going to need a big game from John Franklin Myers. I think you put him on the inside of the line. Look, I think this could be a good game for Jermaine Johnson. Like with the big punt block last week, it's frustrating for me because I love Jermaine Johnson. I want to see him get more reps. But part of me gets why he's not getting more reps is because you have so many people ahead of him. And to be honest, the defensive line has been incredibly healthy. And another thing, too, is I think you need to lean on Bryce Huff a little bit more. I know he's been great as the situational pass rusher, but this is a team that wants to throw the football, maybe get Huff in there on a couple more second down plays, maybe give him a couple more reps out there. but I don't think the Jets are going to really change it up. I don't think they're going to blitz a lot. I don't think that they're going to really change who they are because it's been successful. Let's see what other questions we have. Wow, Joe, I don't know. I think that there's more low points. I think the Rams loss was a god awful point. There's just so many moments like over the last 50 years. Look, this is the thing though, Joe. Like, I get it's bad and it's frustrating, it pisses you off, but look, the fact that we're here in December talking about the Jets making the playoffs to me is a success. We were hoping this Jet team would win 7 games the entire season. They've already done that. I think that this team's in good hands. I feel like you have your head coach, you have your GM, you have a good young roster, you have a burgeoning young roster. I get that the quarterback is frustrating, but look, there is hope with this team. Over the 2 years, do you want to go back to McCagnon where the biggest move was signing a running back that hadn't played in a year, and we're drafting Leonard Williams in, the first round, and we have some weird drafts. We're drafting guys in the 3rd round that can't even make the roster out of training camp. So, I think there's worse. The Micro Fox. Rams not going to be effective against the Lions front. The Jets are going to have to do a lot of jet plays and misdirection plays. Lions don't prepare for a mobile QB. Take advantage. I think it can be effective against the Lions. And look, and just to be effective, it doesn't have to have like the big gaudy numbers. If it opens up the passing game, it opens up play action. I would like to see LaFleur maybe try a couple more like trick plays, but look, I just think like that's the Jets' strength right now is to play off the run. Spin Max Dave also brings a good point. Clemens is back. So that will be big for the defense, and he's been really good on the interior as well. So, look, Quinnen is a big loss, but I tend to be a positive outlook person. Look, if you were to let's be honest, guys, in this chat in the comments afterward, when Quinnen went down, we were like, "Oh shit, this is an ACL." And if that was the case, we're talking about not only losing Quinnen this year, but a vast majority of next year. I still keep saying I want this team to get out of the playoffs in 2022, but 2023 to me is this team's breakout season, and you need Quinnen to be a part of that. So if I have to lose Quinnen for even this game this year with a calf injury, it sucks in the short term, but I would rather have him 100% healthy for next season than lose him out. Because if you lose someone now with an ACL, it's doubly devastating because you not only lose them in a stretch run, but you're going to lose them for the majority of the next season. So those are also my thoughts on there. I feel good about the DBs will hold their own against receivers. Look, it's going to be a tough test. DJ Chark's going to be tough for Michael Carter II in the slot. It's not going to be easy. The Jets are going to have to get pressure, but I'm curious to see how they line up. But I do think this Jet offense can slow down. Look, the Lions have played well, but they've also been a very different home team. Like, their home and road splits are amazing. Like, they have been average at best on the road, where they've been a juggernaut at home. Not valuing White probably is a disaster. He will walk, and we need a QB. I think the evaluation is enough where you're like, okay, this guy should have a role, or at the very least be a high-end backup for us. Look, he's got a rib injury. He's not going to play. They're being cautious with it. I don't know if he will walk. The Jets could franchise tag him. I doubt they're going to give him that big of a contract. But it is curious too, because I also don't think this is the best fit for him. Because look, I think teams will be intrigued by White, but he knows the system here. He knows the coaching staff here. Unless some team gives him a crazy offer in the offseason, we never know. But so that's I don't think it stinks that you can't evaluate more, but he's also got an injury, which also is interesting too, because White got hurt last year. So you do wonder about the durability for Mike White. Hi, Rich. Not comfortable with this. Though, what choice do you have? I just hope the demotion time away will help Zach become a better QB. Run defense lines can be exploited. I think it's more the pass defense, but the defense can't be exploited. Look, this is going to be telling. Like I said at the beginning of this video, Zach, this is This is the moment because you have the pressure of the Jets fans, you have the pressure of the media, you have the pressure of the NFL. The NFL is going to be watching this because the NFL is going to be watching to see what Zach Wilson does. The Jets are in the playoff race. This is the number 2 pick that's been demoted. And look, if Zach goes out there and has a dud, I think that it's done with Zach. Because even if Zach somehow plays well enough to maybe win 3 games, but that game at home cost this team a chance to play, like fans are going to look back at this season and say, if Zach wasn't absolutely atrocious against the Patriots, who the Jets probably should have beaten, if Zach could have won one of those games, if Zach could have beaten the winnable games against the Lions, I think it will be hard to sell this fan base and this locker room going forward on Zach. Now, best case scenario, Zach was humbled, comes out, plays great down the stretch, and maybe the Jets, this is what he needed. But if Zach struggles down the stretch, I think it's done because I just think it's going to be too toxic with this locker room, with this fan base to try to sell them Zach Wilson going forward. I just don't think it's possible. Could it be salvaged? Maybe. Could the Jets maybe try to find a way to make it work? If it doesn't work right now, I just have a hard time seeing them going into 2023 with Zach being the number 1 guy. Could he be on the roster? Sure. Could it be the backup behind like a Jimmy G or something in case one of them gets hurt and the Jets hope maybe the time on the bench will help? It's possible. I mean, personally, one quarterback, if I'm the Jets this offseason, I know he hasn't been talked about a lot, is Gardner Minshew. I mean, Gardner Minshew had no weapons in Jacksonville, had terrible team around, but he still has 41 touchdowns to 18 picks. I mean, he's an efficient quarterback, decent athlete. And look, for people saying Zach, 3 weeks wasn't enough time, look back also at this past 2 weeks. Baker Mayfield basically on a short week got off the plane in LA, didn't know the playbook, didn't know his teammates, was asked to go in to a game. And look, I know the Raiders are nothing to write home about, but Baker Mayfield showed you something and was impressive in that short amount of time. Like, look, 3 weeks in the grand scheme of things is not a lot of time, but you can't tell me that Woody Johnson and the Jets organization is looking around this league, seeing the jumps that many quarterbacks have taken in year 2, and then seeing situations like that where Baker comes in, doesn't know the playbook, and yet leads his team to a game-winning drive. Where Zach has been given everything. Like, he's had the same system, the same OC, the same head coach, the same GM, an abundance of talent added, investments in the offensive line, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. Like, I've been saying this forever. Zach, of all these quarterbacks in this class, has been gifted. Like, if you were to ask the quarterbacks in that draft class, who would you rather go to right now? I guarantee you they'd all say the Jets because of what the Jets have been willing to invest in the quarterback position. Lions are stacking the box of challenging Wilson to throw it 10-plus yards down the field like the Patriots. Look, and Zach's got to take advantage. If he doesn't, he's not the guy. It's the perfect first game back for Zach. Then Jacksonville, he can work himself back into starting. I hope he does great. Not that I'm sold on Zach, but just to raise his trade value. I mean, look, the better he plays, the better it is for this team, the better the chances are. Like, trust me, I don't want to see Zach fail. The Jet fans shouldn't be rooting for Zach to fail. Like, you need him to be successful in order to get to the playoffs right now. The big question is, if Zach is okay and they win the game and Mike White's cleared for Thursday night against the Jaguars, what do you do? I mean, there's so much in this situation that can continue to develop. I hope, Spin Max Dave, I hope if he isn't, it also answers your questions. There's a lot of questions about this Jets quarterback position. And if Zach doesn't give them answers and just more questions, then in a weird way answers the question that he's not the guy. This is not good. Zach Wilson starting is going to lose us the game. Matt, love the confidence, but look, I still think the Jets are the better team. I still think they have an elite defense. That defense gives them a shot every single week. But if Zach folds, I think it's going to be done. Bo Nick Slayer. Wow, we're already talking about the draft. Look, the Jets are obviously not going to be in a position to draft a quarterback early. Richardson, I still think needs some. If I was Richardson, I'd go back for another year. I still think he needs to develop his mechanics. I still think he's very raw. Bo Nix, I almost feel like the Jets need more of a veteran quarterback because they're in a win now window. Yeah, like Nix wasn't bad. I don't know. I don't think I wouldn't feel like wow, like love the Jets' chances. I don't want Zach to fail, but his last game was the worst I've seen for any QB. I mean, they're bad. I don't. That's actually a great question. What's worse, the first or second? What Patriot game was worse, the first one or the second? I mean, it's funny because the second one he was terrible, but didn't turn the football over. But then the first one he threw the ball all over the place and actually gaining yards, but had two of the worst interceptions I've ever seen a quarterback made. I mean, it's actually good. That's actually a good question. Like, which one was worse? No one's waiting for Zach to fail. 300 plus yards in 10 games without Zach, 150 with. Yeah, like the numbers don't lie. I mean, this offense with Zach is hindered. And look, Zach, like this is it. If Zach, it might be one of those situations too. Like maybe he's going to be like another Geno Smith or Tannehill. Sometimes you just need to go to a different place and just be humbled for 2 or 3 years and not play and just have time to work on yourself. And if you get another opportunity, you can take advantage of it. But I mean, look, there's a lot that goes into being a franchise quarterback. There's a lot about responsibility and how you handle it. And I don't think he's done a great job. And look, the offense, it's clear. Like, this isn't just an aberration. We've seen this offense with Flacco over 300 yards, with Josh Johnson 250 yards passing. Like, this offense we've seen with below average quarterbacks succeed. And if below or average quarterbacks are succeeding and you're not succeeding, not good. Zach Wilson, Corey Davis out. Lordy, that's his favorite receiver. I'm nervous about this one. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Maybe he'll have to just throw it to Elijah Moore just out of proxy because he won't be there. And look, part of me also thinks too that if I'm the Jets, I know you want to make the playoffs, but at this point, I would play Denzel Mims over Davis down the stretch. Look, Mims is under contract. Mims is a younger receiver. Mims has been good in run blocking. He's done well in the opportunities given. Look, Corey Davis, you saw why Tennessee let him go. Talented receiver, but the two biggest issues are the drops and the injuries. Like, if I had to guess and make predictions, I don't think Corey Davis is on this team next year. I think the Jets are going to get out from that contract, which they can after this basically 2-year contract, and they're going to move on and invest in other places. Because look, while he's been on the field, he's been solid, but he can't stay healthy. I'd much rather see White next week prime time. Yeah, White hot spotlight on my White. I wouldn't mind that. The line just changed from us to -1. Look, Vegas doesn't love. And look, Vegas goes on the quarterbacks. With Mike White, Jared Goff, I think it probably was a little bit of a push. But now with the uncertainty with Zach Wilson, Goff's at least a serviceable quarterback. That's why I think the line did that. The first one had a bad stretch, no doubt. The Jets were an offside kick away from pulling it out. I say after fans thought still in the Bills game, thinking White goes 8 yards, no timeouts. Yeah. But White still gave them the best chance to win. And look, it's so hard to get the onside kicks now. Look, I think Mann's been okay. I mean, Mann's been inconsistent. He's had some good punts and bad punts. He had the good onside kick in week 3. I mean, look, I don't think he's done enough to be cut as a punter, but I also don't think he's done enough where you say, okay, he's got to be the punter of the future. I thought Zuerlein's been great. I mean, Barrios, like, again, you're limited on the kick returns and the punt returns now in the NFL, and I think he's been fine. I mean, he's been fine. I mean, you'd love to see a return, but they're so hard in the NFL now. He wasn't terrible with the exception of those Patriots games. I Micro Fox, I disagree with that. I like if you look at the whole picture with Zach, I mean, they won games, but I mean, Pittsburgh had the great last two drives, but finished that game at 50% completion percentage. Miami, 14 to 21. Green Bay only threw the ball 18 times, 55% completion. Denver, 26 times. And then you look at the Patriots games, 20 of 41, 9 of 22. And he's gone over 250 yards only twice this year. One was in that Patriot game, and the other one was the first game back in Pittsburgh. So, I mean, it's funny. Like I saw a great thing. Like if you took out, I think, what was it, the 10 of 12 from the Pittsburgh game, like Zach's not only just a bad, I think he would have been under or close to 50% completion this year, which is terrifying. Bam needs to get over 20. I don't think they're going to give him 25 because they want to keep him fresh. They're going to keep rotating the running backs. But I would like to see Ty Johnson get a couple more. I wanted White, Wilson, and a drafted QB for 2023. Three-way competition. I don't mind that. Don't mind that. I'm guessing Matthew Ryan means toward the Lions if I had to guess. This game is the equivalent of Mike White's Chicago game. Zach Wilson has to ball against the Lions D. Yeah, he has to. If he doesn't, I think you're going to turn off the fan base and you're basically going to show this organization you're not the guy, because this is a team that's got the talent not only to be competitive, but they could be in a championship window next year. And that window is a lot bigger if you have a better quarterback. And if Zach can't be the guy, then you move on. It's not looking promising. Again, Melvin, I still think it's a positive. I thought he was done for, I thought it was an ACL, which now I meant done for this year, but done for the majority of next year. So, look, I still think 2023 is this team's breakout year. I want them to make the playoffs this year. I'm desperate for them to make this year. But again, this is still a very young team. I'd rather, again, I try to think of the big picture. I'd rather lose Quinnen Williams for a game or two this year than the majority of next season. So I don't think that is the biggest thing. I hate Zach Wilson. I think that's the majority of a lot of the Jets fan. This is Zach Wilson's last chance. He has to ball. He's playing for his future. If this isn't the last chance, it's pretty darn close, Melvin. I agree with that. Because this is arguably the biggest game for the Jets in the last 5 years. And Zach Wilson goes out and lays an egg in front of that home crowd that loves Mike White, that has seen this team basically struggle the last couple weeks, a team that has gone from being in playoff contention to now being on the fringe, and a team and a fan base that's desperate to end this playoff drought. Look, I still think this season, it'll be a frustrating end, but if this team can get to 9 wins and even if they miss the playoffs, I still would consider it a success. I know a lot of Jet fans wouldn't. But this is the situation. Like, look, Zach's got to go out there and win. If Zach craps the bed, I think that's going to be the end of his tenure with the Jets. I really do. And yes, he might play more games. Yes, he might finish out the season. Yes, he might win some games down the stretch. But I do also think this organization is in the situation where they're saying, look, like, this is the last chance for Zach. If it doesn't work, we have to move on. We have to find a different solution. We've seen this team do it. They've pivoted a lot with injuries. They're quick. They've been able to make adjustments. They've been able to pivot. They've been able to get this team better. They've been able to take advantage of opportunities on the trade market. So I don't think that this team is just going to sit there and wait for Zach. I mean, this team is ready to compete now. And if Zach's not ready, it's time to move off. They're not. They already said Flacco's going to play, but I think Streveler should be the backup. I think Flacco's done. I mean, the thing with Flacco that bothered me with him is he just looked miserable on the field last night. Like, he did not, like, it just seems to me Flacco doesn't mind being on the sideline, doesn't mind being a head coach, but I think he is just like he didn't look like someone that jogged on that field saying, "Oh, this is an opportunity for me to give this team a chance to win or prove myself or really earn it." Like I think he just looked miserable on that field. Like he just does not seem interested. I would give it to Streveler, but again, I think that this team just wants the veteran presence out there. The right move was White for 23 with a developmental core, but they're spending 20 in 24th. White isn't the answer. Look, I still think there's questions with White. I love Mike White, but again, gets injured last year. This year again, gets injured. I mean, this is someone that's like, look, I think White at the very least is proven to be a high-end backup, but you wonder, can he play more than 10 or 15 games? I mean, he's already had significant injuries. Last year he got the injury. This year he's got an injury, and you wonder, like, is this someone that just can't stay healthy? Yeah, I agree. Streveler should be the backup. Yeah, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Again, guys, we'll be back Sunday after the Jets-Lions game. Hopefully talking up Zach Wilson. Hopefully it goes well. But, man, it will definitely be interesting. But, again, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Share this with Jet fans. You know, we want to get as many Jet fans in the community here. Also, check out the community page where we will have active polls throughout the week. And, of course, if you joining us after the show, make sure to put your comments and questions. I will answer them in the next video. But, man, it will be Zach Wilson time, much to the chagrin of a lot of Jet fans. I know there's a lot of nervous energy around this team, but we will see. Sunday will be a defining game in Zach Wilson's career, good or bad. And I will end the show by saying this. This has been my theme since July, and I'm going to stick with it. This season wasn't necessarily about the wins and losses. It's great that this team's ahead of schedule. It's great this team is winning. It's great that this rookie class is a freaking grand slam. It's unbelievable this team has accumulated a lot of great young talent. But I said this in July. I've said this in September, October, November, and now December. This season would be defined by Zach Wilson, good or bad. And so far, it's been a lot of bad. And this feels like the last chance for Zach, because this team has a roster that can win a championship, which is something we did not expect to see this year, this fast, this early. But if the Jets are going to get there, they're going to need a quarterback that can be efficient and be good enough. Not even great, good enough. And if Zach cannot do this, if this reset wasn't good enough, and if he falls on his face against Detroit in MetLife this weekend, we're going to have our answer. It will be a painful answer. It will be a frustrating answer. It will be another, there goes another quarterback answer. But I'd rather have an answer than more questions with Zach. And maybe this is one of the silver linings of this whole situation. Because if he didn't play another game this year, I think a lot of the questions would have been answered to an extent. But now we're going to see another opportunity. He was benched last year after the injury. He's been injured this year. And now he's been benched and coming back. He has to prove that he is the guy who has learned or at least progressed from the last time we saw him on the field. And if he hasn't, this organization's ready to move forward. But I think they are willing to move forward without Zach if he cannot get it done in this critical game. Thanks so much for joining us on Rich Sports Talk. I'm Nolan Rich. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. We will see you next time.